Hi, this is Lisa Meir from lisameir.com, and today we are going to go over some simple, no-nonsense ways to open up your hips. I get a lot of questions about lower back pain. And lower back pain, mistakenly, people think that it comes from their lower back, but usually it comes from your hips being weak and immobile. And so when they are weak and immobile, the spine tends to compensate. It picks up the slack for any movement that you need as far as getting around in life and moving around. So today I'm going to show you 6 movements that you can do, easy movements you can do on the floor to help open up your hips and feel more comfortable and hopefully ease some of your lower back pain. Okay, so the first movement we're going to go over is a hip opener for the front of your hips. So the first movement of the 6 movements for the hips, the first movement is extension, which is when your leg goes behind you. So those muscles are the muscles in the front of your hips. We're going to work on opening up those muscles with a very simple movement, lunging. So it's easy to grab some blocks. That way you have some space to move your leg forward. So you're going to take your right leg forward into a traditional runner's lunge. And just allow your hips to drop towards the floor. Try to keep your spine long as much as possible, so coming up as high or as low on the blocks as you feel comfortable. So it's a good place to start, to just stay here, take a couple deep breaths, and just really allow your pelvis to drop towards the floor. So you don't want to have your hips lifted, you just really want the weight, the gravity to take over and your hips to drop towards the floor. You can also take it a step further if you would like. You can take your blocks to the inside of your foot, move your foot off to the side slightly, and then you can begin to bring your forearms down towards the blocks or even towards the floor if your body's capable of having your forearms on the floor. This will not only open up your hip flexor, but also your hamstring on the other side, which we're going to open up in a moment. But first, this is just trying to focus on the hip flexors. So again, you can just be here on your blocks simply to open up the front of the hip. Just letting gravity take over, taking about 7 to 10 breaths on each side. Okay, so the next movement we're going to go over is a movement for external rotation of the hip. So that's the outward turning of your hips. So if you were to sit cross-legged, that's external rotation. So we're going to work in pigeon, a very simple variation of pigeon to help open up the external rotators. So you're going to come back into your lunge position that we were just in. So you'll come into your lunge, and then what you'll do is you'll move your foot off to the side, just make some space, move your foot off to the side, and then set the outer edge of your leg on a bolster or a cushion or a blanket, and just bring it all the way down towards whatever it is you're sitting on. So if it's really, really low and you're off to the side and you're not balanced, just sit yourself up higher on something. Again, cushion, pillows, blankets, even stacks of blocks if you need to. If this is too much on your knee, and again, you're tilted off to the side too much, you can take your foot underneath whatever it is you're sitting on and decrease the angle at your knee so you can feel like your pelvis is more straight ahead, so we can really get into that hip. You can stay here if this is enough for your body to be here. You'll also feel some opening at the front of your hip when you're in this lifted position. Otherwise, you can begin to come down. You can come onto your forearms on blocks, and you can come all the way down if it's available to your body. And again, you'll be here for 7 to 10 breaths. You really want to wait and be patient. And then after that 7 to 10 breaths, come back up. You can use your blocks to help you bring your foot out, back into the lunge. Pull your foot back, and then switch sides. Okay, so now we're going to work in abduction, which is when the legs move away from the body and the hips open this way in the pelvis, in the socket, in the hip socket. This is one of my least favorite poses, but it's one of the most effective poses for getting the groin and the inner thighs. And you'll see why it's a very challenging pose. It's not a position we're often in, any of us often ever. So it's very challenging and uncomfortable, and really important that you stay in this particular asana for at least a minute and give your body some time to really get into the pose. So you're going, for most of us, take 2 blocks, set them out in front of you, take a bolster or a pillow or a blanket, stack it on top. You're going to come onto your hands and knees. You're going to separate your knees out, straight out from your hips, straight out to the side, and then have your shins in line with your knees and your toes turned out so your feet are flexed. When you come down, you're going to put your belly button on the edge of the bolster. So you're going to feel like you want to come forward and come out of the hip opener, but we want to stay back so the hips stay in line with the knees and the belly button goes down on the edge of the bolster. You'll come down, just turn your head to one side, and give yourself, again, a minute or 2 to relax. And again, let gravity take over. Just let gravity push down on your hips. After about a minute, if you want to stay a little longer, just make sure you turn your head to the other side so you have your head going each direction. Okay, so now we're going to work on flexion, the movement of flexion through the hip, which actually works on opening up the hamstrings, the back of the leg, the posterior part of the leg, and even into the posterior part of the buttock, which affects the hip. The leg affects the hip. So you're going to need a strap, a band, a tie, something that you can make your arms longer. You're going to lie down on your back. Make sure your spine is neutral on the floor, so just allow your belly to come towards your spine and your spine to relax down towards the floor. You're going to take whatever it is you have, strap, band, place it on the ball of your foot, okay? And you're going to pull down on the strap to draw your knee towards your shoulder, okay? Now, if it's easy for you to reach your foot, you can go ahead and grab a hold of your foot. But again, you're going to pull the knee down towards the floor, keep your foot flexed, keep your back on the floor, your spine on the floor, and your shoulders down. So we don't want to be pulled up like this when we're trying to do this pose. So most of you probably will need to have some kind of strap to make your arm a little longer to pull down. Foot is flexed, ankle over the knee, thigh parallel as much as possible to the floor. And then if it's okay for your lower back, you can extend your other leg along the floor. You want to keep this hip down though, so you can take your other hand and press down on the top of your hip. Again, to keep the spine long, leg long, and to pull down. So this is releasing the hamstrings through flexion. So we just did flexion. So now we're going to do adduction. And the movement of adduction actually stretches the outer part of the leg and the outer part of the hip. Not a very fun place to get a stretch. So it'll be the same idea. Spine long on the floor. Taking the strap or the band to the ball of the foot. And this time extending it straight up towards the ceiling, towards the sky. Toes pulled down towards the face, pressing up through the heel so the leg is long. So finding a place on the strap where your arms are long and your leg is long. So you don't want to be grabbing with all of your might to pull the leg towards the body. So the leg needs to be long, and the spine needs to be long, and the arms need to be long in order for this to be effective. Once you're here, you're going to take both pieces of the strap in your left hand. Take the thumb of your right hand and put it in your hip crease. Pull your hip crease away from the shoulder, from the chest, from the shoulder, rotate it away from the body. You can keep this knee bent. All you're going to do is you're going to keep your pelvis and your sacrum on the mat, on the floor, and just take your leg across the front of your body. So this is not a full twist. So you're not twisting yourself and lifting your hip all the way up off of the floor. You're keeping your pelvis on the floor, your sacrum on the floor, your hip down, and just moving the leg. You could also lengthen that bottom leg and take the leg across the body. But again, the back of the body stays on the floor. The spine stays down, the sacrum stays down. And you're going to get an intense, warm sensation through the hip here. Again, holding 7 to 10 breaths. Keeping the chin relaxed down, the neck relaxed and long. So the last movement we're going to do is we're going to work an internal rotation. So just like when we did that penguin pose, it's an awkward position that we don't usually take our hips into. And this internal rotation is another awkward position that we don't normally take our hips into, which makes another reason why they're so important to do, to get all the muscles in the hip socket open. So what you're going to do is you're going to lie down, spine long, everything nice and even on the floor. You're going to lift your head up and take a look at your legs. You're going to walk your right leg straight out to the side, making sure that your knee is in line with your hip. You're going to have the desire to pull your foot back, and we're not pulling the foot back towards the hip. We want to protect the knee here. So we want a right angle behind the knee. So we have the knee coming right out from the hip, the ankle right out from the knee, and the foot flexed. Very important to protect the knee. If you have any pain in the inside of your knee, just stay here, bring your head down, bring your arms up over your head, and take some deep belly breaths. If you do not have any pain in the inside of your knee, you can take this other foot and put it on top to give it a little extra weight to the knee. And then same thing, head down, arms up over the head, Take some deep belly breaths. Please make sure that you keep your foot flexed to protect the knee. Give yourself 7 to 10 breaths. This is a place the hips aren't used to being, so it might take a little time for the hip to unwind. So overhead, nice deep belly breaths. So just remember, the dirty truth about lower back pain is it's actually coming from your hips. So to take the time every day, if you have lower back pain, to do these movements and you'll get some relief. I can promise you, you'll get some relief if you do them every day. So if you have any questions or concerns about any of the movements, if you are wondering about any ways to prop, if you have any issues in your body and some of this doesn't work for your body, just leave your questions in the comments or visit me at www.lisameir.com and I'll do my best to answer any questions you have. Thanks. See you soon.